I was staying at my brother's place in rural Ohio for about 2 weeks while he finished a work contract overseas. The house sat on a gravel road roughly 4 miles outside of Denison, surrounded mostly by cornfields and a tree line that ran along the back of the property. My brother had left me a handwritten list of things to know: which burner on the stove ran hot, where he kept the spare fuses, and at the very bottom, underlined twice, a note that said not to answer the door after dark under any circumstances. He didn't explain it further. The first week passed without any issue. I was working remotely, keeping my schedule tight, waking up around 7 and finishing by 5. The nearest grocery store was about 12 miles out on Route 8, so I made one big supply run on the Monday and settled in. The house itself was comfortable enough. It was a single-story ranch with 3 bedrooms and a detached garage my brother used as a workshop. The nights were quiet, except for the wind moving through the corn and the occasional sound of a truck passing on the main road. The knocking started on a Wednesday around 3 in the morning. 3 slow knocks, evenly spaced, coming from the front door. I woke up and lay still for a moment, thinking I had dreamed it. Then it came again. Same rhythm, same pace. I got up and walked to the hallway without turning on any lights. The front door had a small frosted window set into it at eye level, but the porch light was off and I couldn't make out anything beyond a dark shape. I stood about 6 feet back from the door and waited. The knocking came a third time. I didn't move. After about 2 minutes of silence, I heard footsteps crossing the porch and then gravel crunching as something moved away from the house and into the dark. I called my brother the next morning. He picked up on the second ring, which surprised me given the time difference. I described what happened, and he was quiet for a moment. Then he told me about an incident that took place about 8 months before I arrived. A man had knocked on his door at roughly the same hour, presenting himself as having car trouble on the road nearby. My brother had opened the door and the man had immediately pushed inside, asking to use the phone. My brother said the man's hands were shaking and that his clothes didn't match: dress shoes with dirty work pants and a button-up shirt that was torn at the collar. My brother had given him water, and eventually the man left on foot, refusing to wait for anyone to be called. The next morning, my brother found tire tracks in the cornfield behind the property, leading nowhere. The knocking came back on Friday. This time, it was a woman's voice. She called out that her car had broken down and that her phone was dead and that she was sorry for the hour. Her voice sounded controlled and clear, not panicked the way someone genuinely stranded at 3 in the morning would likely sound. I stood in the hallway again with the lights off. She knocked 3 more times and then went quiet. I moved to the side window in the living room and positioned myself at the edge of the frame where I could see the far end of the porch without being visible from outside. She was standing at the door facing away from me. She was tall and wearing a dark coat. She stood completely still for maybe 90 seconds. Then she turned her head and looked directly at the window where I was standing. I stepped back hard into the wall. My heart was going fast enough that I could feel it in my throat. The porch light was still off. There was no way she could have seen me from that angle at that hour. I stood without moving and listened. She knocked again, 4 times now instead of 3. Her voice came back, still calm, saying she just needed to use the phone. and that she wasn't going to hurt anyone. The way she said that last part, unprompted, completely flat, made my skin go cold. I stayed where I was until the gravel crunched again and the footsteps faded. I checked every window lock in the house twice before I went back to bed. I mentioned it to the woman at the grocery store the following Monday when I went back for supplies. She was the manager and had grown up in Denison. I described the road and what had been happening, and she looked at me the way people look when they're deciding how much to say. She told me that a stretch of property about 2 miles west had been involved in a missing persons case in 2019. 3 people, no resolution. She said the county sheriff had increased patrols on rural roads for about 6 months afterward, and that things had been quiet since then. She didn't say anything else, but when I went to pay, she asked if I was out there alone. I started keeping a flashlight and my phone within reach every night. I also moved a chair against the front door before I went to sleep. On the Tuesday of my second week, at 3 again, the knocking came back. This time, there was no voice, just 4 slow knocks, and then silence. I waited near the side window for nearly 20 minutes. I never heard footsteps leaving. The porch was empty when I checked at first light. There were no tracks in the dirt by the steps that I hadn't already put there myself, which meant whoever it was had stayed on the gravel the entire time. My brother came back on a Thursday. I met him at the door and told him everything in order. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he walked through the house and then stood in the kitchen for a long time. He said there had been 2 other occasions before the one he told me about, both around the same hour, both involving people asking to come inside. He said he had never opened the door a second time after the incident with the man. He also told me he had reported all of it to the county non-emergency line, but nothing had ever come of it. He showed me a contact in his phone, a deputy named Carver, who had taken the original report. He said Carver had mentioned that several other properties on rural roads in a 10-mile radius had reported similar patterns going back at least 4 years. The night before I drove home, I lay in bed, listening to the wind in the corn and watching the shadows on the ceiling. Just before 3, my phone lit up on the nightstand. It was an unknown number, no text, just a photo attached. It was a picture of my brother's front porch taken from the road at night, showing the light off and the door closed. The timestamp on the photo was from the previous Friday, the night the woman had turned and looked at the window. The angle was from somewhere in the yard, close enough to show both side windows clearly.